the third quick sip, and then it's going to be on to the questions from the mailbag here. We're going to switch a little bit of sports here. Does Trev have a tough decision to make after the Nebrasketball season is done?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. It gives me a headache, kind of. It does. I've written, and I feel like it's fair to cut Fred slack in the wake of those injuries to Ben Damel and Juwan Gary. You got to cut him slack. It's only fair. But so they've played 2 games, without those guys, without both of them. Lost to Northwestern at home. Northwestern really was too comfortable offensively in that game. I was amazed by it. They scored on over 50% of their possessions. Northwestern
54.
Yeah, that's high. They got in a big rhythm. Came in and once again and buried Nebraska on its home floor fairly easily. Nebraska made a little run at the end, and then Maryland. Game got away from Nebraska. I would have expected more in those 2 games. So there's this tightrope you walk. I think if you were in this mindset of evaluating Fred, there's this tightrope you walk. You got to cut him slack, but how much slack? How much slack are we cutting him? He's 12-58 in the Big Ten. It's some 12-58. That record's got to matter. You can't ignore it. So yeah, I would say, and you got to watch crowd numbers at PBA. You got to watch those home game crowds. Yeah, I do think there'll be a tough decision. Maybe Fred will do really well and it won't be a tough decision. You bring him back, or maybe he'll just spin out of control and it'll be an easy decision. I don't know. But I just think that the record I watch is that Big Ten record. And I feel bad talking about it because I bet, I know, it's got to kill Fred. It's got to kill him. This losing, you can kind of tell. I hope it's not zapping him too much. That would be a concern of mine if I were a Nebraska fan, that the head coach is affected, because that's a lot of losing. That's a lot of getting hit on over the head.
Sip, we tweeted this out yesterday, and I think it's a lot along the lines of what you just said regarding Coach Hoiberg. And we haven't made a lot of statements, on our Twitter or anything, but we said multiple things can be true at once. We appreciate the changes that they've made this year, and definitely we appreciate the team effort. The injuries have no doubt played a huge factor. And number 3, results can matter, and we're 34-78 in 4 years. I also said we don't have consensus within the Redcast here on what to do. There's solid arguments on both sides. And we got quite a few responses on Twitter from this. People going in both directions. Yes, we need to move on. No, we need to keep them. The 2 times I would respond to somebody pretty vehemently would be if somebody said, well, who cares? It's Nebraska basketball. Nobody cares. I would respond to them. That's a dumb response. Yeah. Number 2, we had one person that responded, it's all about the W's and L's. And I would make the argument that it is deeper than that. You use the word nuance a lot, and I think it's a good word for here. I think it goes deeper than just wins and losses. Has a coach had enough time? And I think that's part of the argument. Yes, no. Mm-hmm. I also think I go back to year 4 of the knee era. When Danny Nee was here after year 4, the same amount of time that Hoiberg had been here, Nee had the success in year 1, took him to the NIT Final Four. But after that, the next 3 years, they finished 6th, and 7th in the Big 8. They had sub 500 records 2 of the years. And I think Devaney was within his rights at that point. He could have made a move, but he also could look to the next season, year 5, look at, Rich King and Bo Reed and Clifford Scales coming back, that they had built to that season. And you could see that hope, and you could see, okay, year 5, I see a reason not to make the change. Don't implode it. That would be my biggest question right now would be, if I'm Trev, is if I'm looking ahead, yeah, we know what the last 4 seasons have been, but is there a reason in year 5 for me to think that it's going to get turned around? I don't want to blow this up too early if I feel like year 5 is going to be better. That would be the question. And me personally, I'm not sure that I look at year 5 and think great things right now. I think some of the best players we have are going to be guys that are gone, Bandamel and Walker and Griesel.
Yeah,
that's me personally.
I agree. I agree with what you're saying. Really with Fred, it's an interesting discussion in part because I think most people want him to succeed.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Absolutely. 100%.
Now, I think most people do want him to succeed. Do they believe he can succeed? I think that's the distinction you got to make. And that's kind of where I'm at. I do want him to. I like him. I thought the hire was good. I was wrong. And I'll tell you how I was wrong. I mean, there was a coach. I thought it was a great hire. I pushed for it. And then I heard from coaches that said, no, his system will never work. System won't work in the Big Ten. You should have identified that. I didn't. It didn't. His system didn't work. He changed it completely. And now I like it. I mean, I like the way they play. I like the guys he brought in. But can he whip it? He doesn't have to whip the entire roster around. That's kind of I would say that's an inaccurate narrative. He doesn't have to change it. There's guys coming back. But he's going to have to replace some key guys. So it comes down to that. Do you believe he can do it? Can he bring in another batch of guys like Griesel and Juwan Gary and Bandamel? Can he do that? I don't know. That's the question, and that's what you don't know. It's tempting to bet on him, but here's the thing: they keep losing. The wild card in the discussion is how much does it zap Fred? How much does the losing affect him? Is it affecting him? I don't know. It's got to be to a certain extent.
Well, one thing that I've noticed, and I'm one of the ones that kind of is pushing towards the time to move on side of things, which isn't very Kool-Aid of me. But one of the things that seems really consistent with Hoiberg during his tenure has been that he brings in a lot of guys that are known to be great shooters, right? And known to be, and then they come here and for some reason they're not. I guess that's the easiest way to put it. And why do you think that is? Is it coaching? Is it just, to me, it just seems uncanny how often it happens with a lot of these guys.
I know what you're getting at. The one area that you really look at is a free throw line.
Free throws, yeah.
Yeah, that's been really inexplicable.
Terrible.
3 of his 4 years have been, pretty bottom of the barrel. Last year wasn't that bad. They were 71% or in that area. But the other 3 years it's been bad. And it's been really bad this year. Fred shot 85% from the line in the NBA. I don't know why that doesn't translate. He teaches it right, but it's not being absorbed. Fred he knows how to teach shooting, but it's not getting absorbed for whatever reason. As far as those guys, they'll bring back, probably Breidenbach. You'd think they'd bring back Jamarcus Lawrence, Wilcher, Denham Dawson,
Lloyd,
Casey, Lloyd. Now Bandamel, his college career is over, but you can bring back Juwan Gary. So there's some guys there. So it's not total roster flip again. So the answer to your question is, I do think there's going to be a tough decision that has to be made.
Is that good enough for year 4 though, Sip? In the era of NIL and transfer portal and all that? I mean, is that what we have coming back good enough in year 4?
That'll be year 5,
or 5 and year 5 to be excited about? Because we got a buddy listens to the show, Bella. He's a humongous season ticket holder, humongous basketball fan, and that's his thing every time. It's year 4. Some of these things we're talking about in a small roster where you should be able to flip it fairly quickly with the facilities we have and the money we throw at it. It doesn't, to me, and I'm kind of a casual basketball fan, front runner type.
Everybody's a casual basketball fan around here. That's the problem. Everybody's casual.
Well, I'd love to get hyped about it, but it's like every time you do, it's not really worth the effort.
Yeah, the thing that bothers me more than anything is just how casual it is. It's like I don't know. It's kind of a silly example in a way, but I go to Buffalo Wings and Rings with my grandson all the time. And we went the other night when they're playing Northwestern. And when we were driving, I said, we might be going at a bad time. It'll be a tip off for that game. There might be a bunch of people in there watching it. And we might, it might be kind of packed. It's stupid. I mean, why did I think that? There's nobody.
I heard you talk about that on the radio the other day.
And that's to me, that's I don't know. I can make a mountain out of a molehill with the best of it, but that is not good to me. That is not the way it should be. Not that place should be packed. I doubt even East Lansing it's packed in those places, but I bet there's a fair amount of people that gather, watch Michigan State, Indiana, Michigan, decent teams in the Big Ten. But here it's not even something people think about.
I think part of the problem with that, and this is where I don't put it on the fans anymore, when you've been sub 500 for so long, and really the entire era of Hoiberg, we've been sub 500. It's not that fans don't care. It's just so bad that people just eventually stop.
Beller cares. He drives down from Omaha for all these games, and he's a guy that wanted Miles to maybe get another chance. I mean, if you look at it from, like, let's just take the casual fan out of it. Let's take the hardcore fan and look at the hardcore fan. What has the program done to serve them?
You're right. Yeah, that's an issue.
Yeah,
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dave.
No, I'm just saying, like, I've been thinking about this a lot because we've had some arguments amongst ourselves. Rob's like, let's get rid of him, and I'm like, and to your point of, like, this has been a restart with Hoiberg for year 4, but I mean, does that mean that he should get another year to keep this going or not? It's to your point, Mac and hockey of like, just the program hasn't given the fan base much. I mean, I was thinking about the Miles era, and it's a really interesting era in the sense of, like, he would have, if it wasn't for that run of, like, winning 8 or 9 in a row in year 2 and making the tournament, he never would have got to year 6, right? Yeah. I mean, like, he just wasn't right. But I mean, because he's after that year 2 where he makes the run to the tournament, he has 3 really horrible years. I mean, even with good talent, they were sub 500, and that sucked the life out of me. I was really excited about Nebraska basketball for year 3 under Tim Miles. I thought that guy was the ticket. He was like, he's finally going to get us back. I was like, he's going to win a game in the tournament. We could go to the Sweet 16 under 10 miles. And it just, like, when it fell flat in years 3 through 5, it just sucked the life out of this Nebraska basketball fan. I was like, man, really? That didn't work, And so it's just been so long compared to the knee eras where we just got rolling finally. And it was so fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
But think of that. You just said it, though. That little run kept him on for 2 more years. We didn't even win anything that year, really.
Yeah.
And that kept him. That's what the fan base is willing to attach to and embrace, and we would rock. PBA would be unbelievable.
It would.
If we had a program that was serviceable weekend or day in and day out.
We saw No Sit Sunday and the excitement that could be created there. And that's with, 5 of the 7 years that Miles was here. We finished 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th. 5 of the 7 years, and yet still there's people that to this day would say we should never have gotten rid of him either. So it's tough here.